Yeah, so I started working on this play a really long time ago. It was probably 2009 that I first started working on it. I mean, I was, still in my 20s. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I were living in a fifth floor illegal sublet walk up in New York, and we were both actually teaching expository writing at Rutgers in New Jersey, and I found myself really desperately trying to reach out to my students because they were largely so disaffected and held back, and I was trying to connect with them, and at a certain point in the semester I just desperately asked them to write something honest. And one of my students wrote me a line that made its way into the play and into the film, which was, I think I need to accept that my life is not going to be very exciting. And it just broke my heart in half. And I decided I wanted to write a play about an expository writing teacher desperately trying to connect to a young person, which led me to a story about a father reconnecting to a daughter. And at a certain point, I think I realized that I had a number of false starts with it. And I realized that I kind of needed to put more of myself on the line with it. And, I grew up gay in a town in North Idaho. I went to a religious school that was very hostile toward gay people. I was eventually outed and had to leave. And I, for a number of years, was self-medicating with food. I was able to find an off-ramp due to the love and support of people around me, mostly my husband, who I've been with for 17 years now. But I knew well that not everyone had that off-ramp. And I also know that, there were plenty of people out there who are big and happy and healthy, and I would never say that this is a story about all people who are struggling with obesity, but it was my story. And it's one I thought was worth telling.
I was lucky to stumble on it 10 years ago when it was off Broadway at Playwrights Horizon in New York in a 125-seat theater, and was just deeply moved because I was brought into the lives of these characters that on the surface were so different than I was growing up in Brooklyn, the other side of the United States, but I knew these characters, and they were dealing with issues that I've dealt with, and there were so many themes that overlapped in Sam's work and my work that it just made complete sense for everything that I was working on. I guess, so 2009, when was it up? 2012?
2012 was the production.
2012, so
yeah,
I don't know my filmography, but probably it's like pre-Black Swan, or what was that? Post Black Swan.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
Yeah. It was when you were editing Noah. Was when we first.
Oh, is that
met.
when it was?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So the themes were sort of floating around, and I just felt connected to these characters. And for me, that is cinema, and that is art. When you see honest characters portrayed that are so richly written, that I knew I would have a great time with actors exploring this, blocking it, bringing it to life, turning a theatrical piece, which is limited in many ways, to cinema, where, my mentor, Stuart Rosenberg, would always say, when you watch a play, it's like a slice of a pie. But when you actually make cinema, you're inside the pie, and you can shoot from everywhere. So I knew there was a way to expand it and turn it into something, and I was like, wow, this is a big challenge to take something that's so confined, but try to turn it into cinema.
I think every character in this film is incredibly lonely, and honestly, filming during a time where COVID restrictions were just very much still in place, and we were all very isolated, I felt like that kind of helped in a weird way, like spending a lot of time alone and being away from family. So I don't know.
We also took care of one another a great deal more. I mean, not just in the way that you would do for the protocols, but there were higher stakes. So this is about a man who's doing something as if it's the last time he ever will. I think we all kind of felt like that. What's tomorrow going to bring? We don't know. We don't know. We live for it now. and it brought us closer together, and we took better care of one another. I saw that when I watched the film.
We had to, isolate a little bit when we weren't working because it was in the heat of the pandemic. So just being in the middle of nowhere on top of, staying in your house the entire time and then getting shuttled to set and then having to still social distance, but it's so like almost awkward trying to get to know everyone. But like Brendan was saying, we definitely did. We were all in it together, so it did make us come closer. And like Sadie was saying, it definitely helped with just kind of getting in the psyche of the character of just being alone and feeling that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it took 10 years to cast the film. That was the biggest hurdle with making this film, was who could play Charlie. And I spent a lot of time meeting lots of different actors, thinking about lots of different actors, people coming to me and suggesting different actors. And it just didn't get me out of bed in the morning to make it. There was nothing that was like, oh, that's an exciting idea. And that's a hard thing to explain what that is. That's that gut feeling, the same reason you're attracted to a film, or the same reason you start to write a play or a screenplay, or the same thing that attracts an actor to a role. It's something inside that we feel that it makes, that clicks and light goes off. And for me, Brendan did not surface as an idea till I stumbled on the idea, and then immediately, without knowing that deep, I wasn't really a student of his work because I'm a little bit of older to a lot of Brendan's work and missed a lot of that work. But meeting him as a gentleman and getting a sense of his presence, I was like, this guy can pull it off. And it was just a gut feeling. And to be clear, with Sam and a bunch of people were sort of like, oh, okay, maybe. And then we said, let's put up a reading of it. And it was a reading in February of 2020 with these two were there. This guy I hadn't met yet. But from moment one, it was like, okay, we've got Charlie. And then the pandemic happened 2 weeks later, so it kind of delayed a few things before we got going, but that's how it all started.
When I met Darren, he told me this was the story of a man who's living with such regrets that he's been isolating himself and overeating. He's carrying an unhealthy amount of weight, but that's less important to him than what he really wants, which is to reconnect with his daughter and let her know he loves her, if he can. And I truly have latched on to a notion in recent years that if it's easy, don't do it. Go towards the danger. Go towards the risk. Listen to that voice inside you that says you have to do this, and overlook whatever might be a bit awkward or uncomfortable with how you go about doing it. Namely, the apparatus that you'd have to wear to create Charlie, or the circumstances that we worked under, or that it was a challenging time for everyone to have to come together, as we discussed. I wanted to be a part of this man's redemption tale, and I always wanted to keep in sight the feeling that we don't know if or not he's going to make it. We really don't know, and that kept me excited every day to come to work. I might have smiled a little too hard and my cheeks cramped up, and then my face started leaking spontaneously a little bit, and all the Italian people with their ovation. And it felt like coming to a journey's end for all of us with a big reward, and it was immensely fulfilling to enjoy it, and with Hong and with Sadie. What can I say? It was a strong feeling of accomplishment.
The Toronto audiences were exceptional too.
They're like the cool kids who are watching.
Yeah. Toronto was just really, really. I'm very thankful to the film festival and to the audiences here.
I mean, I'm a theater kid, and I'm an off-Broadway kid, and so like, I've been living with this story and this play for a really long time. And I'm so used to experiencing it in small rooms with 100 people or so, and the experience of last night when there was 1,000 people or in that room. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable, and I'm just so grateful. I mean, I felt it the first time I saw the cut. I was on set the entire time, and so I was very involved, and everybody was so generous with me in the way that they involved me so deeply, and so I had a sense of what it could be, but I when I saw the first cut, my palms were just sweating and I was shaking. I was so nervous because I was like, what is this story on film? I've only ever, this was my first screenplay. I bought Final Draft to write this screenplay, and so I didn't know what to expect. But I remember like that first cut when you showed that to me months ago, and 5 minutes in, my shoulders fell and I was just like, oh my God, he did it. They did it. And I've just been awash in gratitude ever since.
There is something about Sam's writing that I find. He just put up a play in New York, what was it, a couple of months ago. Yeah. And there's a reoccurring theme that I think people want right now, which is we all lost a lot of human connection in the last few years. And Sam is always about finding human connection in very difficult times. And that's what his characters are always looking for. And it breaks my heart every time I see one of his plays. There's that yearning for people to take care of each other and treat each other right. And please, can you repeat my favorite line in the great line of the play? Can you do it? You can do it.
Do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just, for me, that's it. And it's like, and I think that's true. I'm on that side of the pessimism, optimism argument, which is I do think that we all want to care about each other, but it's just, we're just, so many forces are working to pull us apart. And so the more that we can put that into the world, the better. And with characters that people approach with such prejudice, it's really important to remind us all that we're all together and we're all connected in so many different ways.
And in the absence of the extraordinary Hong Chau and Samantha Morton, can we just take a moment to acknowledge how incredible they are in this movie? Yeah.
I'm sad that Hong and Sam aren't here. It's tough. But, yeah.
When she took him out to give him the chat on the patio, that's got to be my all-time favorite. You're coming out, and we're going to have a talk behind the wood pile conversation. And we're gonna get real.
There's a great story about Hong with that, which you guys probably don't know. So I was struggling to cast that role, and I have been a fan of Hong Chau since she was in Downsizing when I first saw her, and I remember asking about her at the very beginning, and for some reason, because of it's all virtual casting now, which is like one of the worst things about the pandemic that's happened to us as actors and directors, is that we can't meet in a room and feel each other. We're like over Zoom, and it was so strange. I never met him till he showed up on set, and I was like, oh wow, you're really, really short. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. He's tall. He's very tall. I'm just joking with you. But you don't know, things because you're in there. But with Hong, finally the tape came to me, and it was a self-tape that she did because she was somewhere in the world, and she blocked the scene with the camera in a very subtle way. The way she moved her body, she was just using her presence to the camera in a way that I knew she got the scene. And I was like, oh, wow, she's not only a actor, she will be a director, I'm pretty sure, one day, Hong. So that was moving. And just about Sam, which you probably can talk a lot about, because we come from that, we were making films when Sam was the great, and she's still the great, and it was just amazing.
I always felt about Sam that there's something transparent about it. Like, she's almost like she's missing a layer, and she reveals, radiates like this revelation all the time. And for her to be able to come from the UK where she was working, we rehearsed for 3 weeks, as would do a theater company. So, given all the small space we were working in, we were like a submarine crew. I needed to be touched up all the time, et cetera, et cetera. We knew our job, we knew our performances, but we learned that in absence of having her there to rehearse it with us. But she did, through the miracle of technology. But when she arrived, she showed up like my long lost ex-wife. You know, like I was astonished by the connection that she brings to it. And all I could do was say, I'm really happy to meet you. I'm a big fan from when I saw your work up until this point. And she just made us believe the history that these two people had. She made me believe that when she tells you to get out, like, you're in trouble, young lady. Like,
she can't do anything unless it's authentic somehow. It was
Yeah.
a lot of actors can, when I need a little like Hollywood fakeness, I'm like, yeah, just get through it. But she doesn't.
No.
She won't. She can't play that game. It's got to be real.